Lieutenant Ta-1 nodded grimly as their pod drifted in space, waiting for rescue. Earth will not forget this treachery. As the debris of the Star Messenger cooled in the vacuum of space, humanity's age of innocence came to an end. The Varian Empire had made their intentions clear, but they would soon learn that humans were not so easily conquered. The rescue of the surviving crew members and their report to Earth's government would set in motion events that would shake the galaxy. The war that followed would prove that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in advanced technology or ancient empires, but in the unbreakable spirit of those fighting for their freedom. And so began humanity's first interstellar war, with the destruction of a diplomatic vessel serving as the spark that would eventually bring the mighty Varian Empire to its knees. 3 months of brutal warfare had left Earth's once proud defense fleet scattered across the solar system in pieces. The night sky, once filled with the reassuring lights of orbital defense platforms, now showed only the ominous glow of approaching Varian warships. In a hidden underground facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Captain He-Jin Lee walked through the dim corridors of humanity's last hope. The experimental ship Thunderbird waited in its launch bay, its sleek hull gleaming under the emergency lights. 3 months ago, she had watched helplessly as her diplomatic vessel was destroyed. Now she had a chance for justice. Captain on deck. Lieutenant Ta-1 called out as Ho-Jin entered the bridge. The small crew of 4 snapped to attention. They were all that remained of Earth's best, chosen specifically for this desperate mission. Engineer Song-Mai looked up from her console, her fingers still dancing over the controls as she ran final checks on the quantum core. The revolutionary device hummed softly, its blue glow pulsing like a heartbeat through the ship's walls. She had designed it herself, working day and night while their world burned above. "The core is stable, Captain," Song-Mai reported. "All systems are running at optimal levels." Weapons specialist Kita stood at his station, running combat simulations. His quiet confidence was reassuring. He had never missed a target in his career, and they would need that perfect accuracy now more than ever. "Status report," He-Jin ordered, settling into the captain's chair. Tai-1 brought up the tactical display. "Varian forces have destroyed our outer system defenses. Their main fleet will reach Earth in less than 48 hours. Over 500 warships, led by King Doran himself." The bridge fell silent as they absorbed this information. 500 ships against their one. The odds seemed impossible, but the Thunderbird was unlike anything humanity had built before. "Show them the core's capabilities," Song-Mai, He-Jin requested. The engineer nodded and activated a demonstration. The ship's quantum core flared to life, its energy flowing through special conduits throughout the hull. "The core can analyze enemy weapons in real time," she explained. "It adapts our shields and systems to counter any attack pattern. The more they throw at us, the more we learn and adapt." "Theory is one thing," Kita added, "but in practice." He brought up the results of his weapons tests. "Our adaptive systems have already increased weapons efficiency by 300%. We can pierce Varian shields with precision strikes." Ho-Jin stood and faced her small crew. These 3 people, along with herself, carried the hopes of 7 billion souls on their shoulders. "I won't lie to you. This mission is likely one way, but we're out of options and out of time." "The Varians think they've broken us," Tai-1 said firmly. "They're wrong." Song-Mai's hands tightened on her console. 3 months ago, they murdered our diplomatic team. They thought we'd surrender. Instead, we built this ship, Kita finished, patting his weapons console with pride. "We've got a few surprises for them." The captain allowed herself a small smile. This was why she had chosen them, not just for their skills, but for their unbreakable spirit. "Launch preparations are complete," Song-Mai reported. "Core is ready for full power engagement." He-Jin took her seat and opened a channel to command. "This is Captain Lee. Thunderbird is ready for launch." The voice of the Earth Defense Force commander came through, heavy with emotion. "You are authorized to launch, Thunderbird. You carry humanity's hopes with you. Good hunting." The massive underwater doors above them began to open, revealing the dark ocean waters. The Thunderbird's engines hummed to life, the quantum core's energy spreading through every system. Drill's upper arms crossed while his lower ones clenched into fists. "Captain," he called out to a nearby security officer, "this human has insulted the honor of the Trilar Empire with baseless accusations. Deal with it." Jai Yun's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "Wait," she started to say, "I have proof." The security officer's weapon made no sound. There was just a brief flash of light, and Jai Yun Park crumpled to the floor. Her datapad clattered beside her, screen still displaying the damning numbers she'd discovered. The assembled delegates gasped, but none dared speak out. Drell looked down at Jai Yun's body with complete indifference. "Remove this waste," he ordered, "and let it be noted that the human died of natural causes. Their weak constitution is well known." As cleaning drones moved in to collect Jai Yun's body, Drell turned back to his conversation, as if nothing had happened. The other delegates quickly resumed their previous activities, though their forced smiles couldn't hide their shock. None of them noticed the small device in Jai Yun's collar that had recorded everything. None of them knew that her death had already been reported to Earth through quantum channels. None of them realized that they had just started a chain of events that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. In the space station's morgue, Jai Yun's body lay in a cold storage unit, her face peaceful despite her violent end. The Trilar Empire had killed her without a second thought, considering her death as insignificant as swatting an insect. They would learn, far too late, that they had just made the biggest mistake in their 10,000-year history. Humanity had been patient, peaceful, and cooperative, but they had never been weak. And now, the Trilar Empire was about to discover exactly what it meant to wake a sleeping giant. In orbit above Earth, warships that had been hidden in plain sight began powering up their systems. In secret bases across human space, soldiers who had trained for years checked their equipment one final time. And in the halls of Earth's government, grim-faced leaders gave the orders they had hoped would never be necessary. The Trilar Empire had killed the wrong species' daughter. Admiral Suho Kim sat in his dimly lit office at Earth Defense Command headquarters, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. The notification of Jai Yun Park's death pulsed red on his datapad, its simple text carrying the weight of years of careful planning and patient preparation. "Computer, verify quantum signature," he commanded, his voice steady despite the anger burning in his chest. "Signature verified. Recording authentic. Time of death, 1432 Galactic Standard Time." Kim closed his eyes for a moment, remembering the bright young intern he'd met just 3 months ago. She had been so excited about her assignment, so eager to serve humanity's interests. Now she was gone, killed like a bothersome insect by an empire that had grown too proud, too sure of its own superiority. His fingers moved across the datapad's surface, entering a series of commands he had hoped never to use. "Computer, initiate protocol Sleeping Dragon. Authorization Kim Alpha 709. Around Earth and throughout human space, hidden systems began to wake. In asteroid bases and underwater facilities, massive fabrication plants hummed to life. Orbital platforms that had masqueraded as communication relays revealed their true nature as weapon platforms. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers started shedding their civilian facades. Kim opened a secure channel to the Joint Chiefs. One by one, their faces appeared on his screen. Military leaders from every nation on Earth. They had all received the same notification. "The Trilar have made their choice," Kim said simply. "Operation Ghost Fleet is now active." General Santos, commander of the South American Defense Force, spoke first. "All our ships are reporting ready. The Trilar never questioned why we needed so many merchant vessels for our limited trade routes." "Of course they didn't," Admiral Chen of the Asian Alliance added. "They were too busy congratulating themselves on allowing us to have a few primitive ships. They never scanned below the surface modifications. Kim nodded. For years, humanity had played the role of an emerging civilization, presenting themselves as technically capable but militarily unsophisticated. Every diplomatic mission, every trade delegation, every cultural exchange had been part of an elaborate deception. "Status report," Kim ordered, and the responses came quickly. "Ghost Fleet Alpha, ready for deployment. Quantum strike forces standing by. Stealth carriers in position near all major Trilar worlds. I combat systems online and sensing." The deception had been total. When human ships arrived late to diplomatic functions, the Trilar assumed it was due to inferior drive technology. In reality, those ships were carefully mapping hyperspace routes and placing quantum beacons for the coming war. When human engineers expressed interest in Trilar shield harmonics, their hosts happily demonstrated their superior technology, never realizing they were revealing critical weaknesses. "Display tactical overview," Kim commanded. The holographic display expanded, showing the positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. Green dots represented their hidden fleet, positioned over months and years of careful planning. Red markers showed Trilar military installations, their defenses analyzed and cataloged by countless diplomatic visits. "Begin Phase 1, Kim ordered. "All ships maintain quantum silence until synchronized strike time. No communications, no drive signatures. We move as one, or not at all." Across human space, soldiers who had trained in secret for years began boarding their ships. These weren't the simple vessels the Trilar had seen. These were warships built with humanity's most advanced technology, systems that had been developed in absolute secrecy. Kim opened a final communication channel to the President of the United Earth Government. "Madam President, Protocol Sleeping Dragon is active. Awaiting final authorization." The President's face was grim but determined. "The Trilar Empire has shown us their true nature, Admiral. They believe they can kill our people without consequence. Show them their mistake." Authorization granted. Kim ended the transmission and stood, walking to the window that overlooked the Pacific Ocean. Somewhere up there, invisible to the naked eye, humanity's real fleet was preparing for war. The Trilar would soon learn that humanity's peaceful nature had been a choice, not a limitation. "Computer, send final combat authorization to all Ghost Fleet commanders. Operation timing set for 600 tomorrow." Message reads, "Remember Jai-Yun Park." Acknowledgements came in from across human space, brief, encrypted bursts that the Trilar's vaunted detection systems would never notice. In less than 24 hours, the galaxy's oldest empire would learn the price of their arrogance. Kim looked down at his datapad one last time, at the image of Jai-Yun Park from her diplomatic court file. She was smiling, full of hope and purpose. "They thought they could kill one of our own without consequences," he said softly. "They're about to learn that humanity protects its children." As night fell over Earth, humanity's hidden strength gathered in the darkness of space. The Trilar Empire had ruled for 10,000 years through force and fear. They had never faced an enemy like humanity, an enemy that had spent years preparing for this moment, an enemy that had turned patience and deception into an art form. Tomorrow, the galaxy would change forever, and it would all begin with a synchronized attack that would demonstrate exactly why humanity's apparent weakness had been the greatest deception of all. Admiral Kim returned to his desk, beginning the final preparations for war. The Trilar Empire had killed a human girl today. Tomorrow they would learn why that had been the worst mistake in their long history. The sleeping dragon was finally awakening, and its fury would shake the stars themselves. Commander He-Jin Lee stood on the bridge of the EFS's Retribution, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the tactical display. The massive warship, hidden for years beneath layers of quantum shielding, hung motionless in space just outside the Trilar defense grid's detection range. "All ships report ready, Commander," his first officer, Lieutenant Park, announced. "Ghost Fleet is in position." Lee nodded, his eyes fixed on the holographic representation of Trilar Prime's orbital defenses. the Triler's pride and joy. A network of defense platforms and automated weapon systems that had protected their homeworld for centuries glowed red in the display. "Begin quantum shift," Lee ordered. "All ships activate stealth protocols." Around the Retribution, space itself seemed to ripple as dozens of warships phased into quantum space. The ships didn't disappear. They simply shifted slightly out of normal reality, becoming invisible to conventional sensors. It was technology the Triler had never imagined possible, developed in secret by human scientists who had spent decades preparing for this moment. "First wave in position," Lieutenant Park reported. "Target locks confirmed on primary defense stations." Lee watched as green markers representing human ships moved into attack position. The Triler's vaunted sensor network showed nothing. Their mighty defense grid, which had repelled countless attacks over the millennia, was about to be proved worthless. "Remember Jai-Yun Park," Lee said softly, then raised his voice. "All ships, weapons free. Execute." The attack began in complete silence. Quantum torpedoes, invisible to normal space, passed straight through the Triler's shields as if they didn't exist. The first defense station simply ceased to exist, imploding as its quantum structure was torn apart at the subatomic level. Alarms finally began blaring across the Triler defense network, but it was already too late. More stations vanished in quick succession as human ships struck with surgical precision. Decades of careful observation had identified every weak point, every vulnerability in the Triler's defenses. "Second wave, begin your attack runs," Lee commanded. "Target their communication arrays. Keep them blind and deaf." The Triler response was chaos. Their ships, finally realizing they were under attack, began firing randomly into space, hoping to hit targets they couldn't see. Their weapons passed harmlessly through the quantum-shifted human vessels. "Commander," Lieutenant Park called out, "we're detecting power spikes in their planetary shield grid. They're trying to increase power to their defensive systems." Lee allowed himself a small smile. "Exactly as expected. Activate the resonance transmitters." Years ago, when human engineers had expressed such interest in Triler shield technology, their hosts had been happy to demonstrate their superior systems. They never realized that every demonstration had been carefully recorded, analyzed, and used to develop weapons specifically designed to exploit the fundamental frequencies of their shields. The resonance transmitters activated, sending carefully calibrated waves of energy through space. The Triler's enhanced shields, instead of providing protection, began to vibrate at their resonant frequency. Across the planet's defense grid, shield generators overloaded and exploded. "Triler Defense Command is attempting to broadcast distress signals," an officer reported. "Let them," Lee replied. "Their calls for help will only reach empty space. All their quantum relay stations were disabled in the first minute of our attack." On the tactical display, more red markers representing Triler defenses winked out. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, their AI combat systems adapting faster than organic crews could respond. The mighty defenses of Triler Prime, which had stood for thousands of years, were being systematically dismantled in a matter of minutes. "Sir, we're detecting civilian ships attempting to flee the system," Lieutenant Park reported. "Let them go," Lee ordered. "We're not here for civilians. Maintain focus on military targets only." The battle, if it could even be called that, continued with mechanical precision. Human ships appeared and disappeared in quantum space, striking their targets and vanishing before the Triler could even register their presence. It was less a fight and more an execution of a carefully planned operation. "Final defense stations targeted," the weapons officer announced. "Preparing final volley." Lee watched as the last of Triler Prime's orbital defenses vanished from the tactical display. In less than 30 minutes, humanity had destroyed defenses that had been thought impregnable for millennia. "Send the message," Lee commanded. A tight beam transmission was directed at the Triler planetary government. The message was simple: "You killed one of ours. Now you see what that means. This is only the beginning. As the message was sent, Lee thought about Jae-yun Park, a young woman who had died simply for doing her job, killed by an empire too arrogant to imagine there would be consequences. Today was just the first step in showing them how wrong they had been. All ships, prepare for Phase 2, Lee ordered. The orbital defenses were just the beginning. Now we show them what humanity can really do. The ESS Retribution and its fleet of ghost ships shifted back into quantum space, disappearing as completely as if they had never existed. Behind them, they left the burning ruins of the most sophisticated defense network in known space, destroyed with an ease that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity's peaceful nature had been a choice, not a weakness, and the Trilar Empire was about to learn exactly what it meant to face the full might of an enemy they had grievously underestimated. In his quarters later, Lee looked at the image of Jae-yun Park that had been distributed to all fleet commanders. "This was for you," he said quietly, "and we're just getting started." The next phase of humanity's response was about to begin, and the Trilar Empire's worst nightmare was only beginning to unfold. Supreme Overlord Krath's scales had dulled to a sickly gray as he watched the latest reports flood into the Imperial Command Center. His mighty throne, carved from rare stellar crystals, no longer felt like a seat of power. It had become a witness chair to his empire's destruction. Another supply convoy lost in the Vega sector. A junior officer reported, his own scales flickering with fear. Captain Sun Mi-kang's ghost fleet struck again. No survivors. Krath's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. The human captain had become a nightmare figure to the Trilar military. Her ships appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before anyone could respond. Dozens of convoy escorts had been destroyed trying to protect vital supply lines. "Show me the latest strategic map," he commanded. A holographic display that materialized before him told a story of unprecedented disaster. Red markers showed systems lost to human forces. Yellow indicated worlds in revolt, inspired by humanity's success. The blue dots representing secure Trilar holdings were now few and far between. Supreme Overlord, his military chief, stepped forward. "We've lost contact with the Centauri sector. The humans' eye combat systems adapted to our latest encryption in less than an hour. Our commanders can't issue orders fast enough to counter their attacks." Krath rose from his throne, his massive frame trembling with rage and fear. Just days ago, his empire had seemed eternal, unshakable. Now it was falling apart faster than anyone had thought possible. A new alert flashed across the command screens. The human ghost fleet had struck again, this time hitting 3 systems simultaneously. Supply lines that had taken centuries to establish were being severed in minutes. Worlds that had been under Trilar control for generations were falling to precision strikes that crippled their defenses before they even knew they were under attack. "How?" Krath demanded. "How did they hide such military capability? Our intelligence said they were barely above primitive." His intelligence chief, scales now a pale yellow of shame, spoke softly. "They deceived us, Supreme Overlord. Every diplomatic mission, every trade delegation, they were gathering intelligence. Every time we demonstrated our superior technology, they were studying our weaknesses." Another alert. Another system lost. The humans' eye-driven ships moved with impossible coordination, adapting their tactics faster than any organic commander could respond. Traditional Trilar military doctrine, based on overwhelming force and rigid hierarchy, was proving useless against an enemy that could think and react at machine speeds. "Supreme Overlord," his communication chief called out, "we're receiving reports of uprisings on occupied worlds. The subject species, they're using the chaos to rebel." Of course they were. Centuries of Trilar oppression had created a galaxy full of enemies just waiting for a chance to strike. Humanity had shown them that the Empire wasn't invincible after all. A massive explosion rocked the Imperial Palace. Emergency sirens began to wail. "Human strike force detected," someone shouted. They're inside the capital's defense perimeter. Krath watched in horror as human warships appeared literally inside his capital's supposedly impenetrable defenses. They must have quantum shifted past every layer of security, appearing exactly where they wanted to be. "Broadcast a system-wide alert," he ordered. "All ships to defend the capital." "Communications are being jammed," his staff reported. "We can't get signals out." Another explosion, closer this time. On the tactical displays, Krath watched as human ships systematically destroyed every military installation around his capital. Their attacks were precise. Civilian areas remained untouched while military targets were eliminated with surgical accuracy. Supreme Overlord, his chief advisor approached, scales now almost white with fear. Perhaps we should consider negotiating." "Negotiate?" Krath roared, with primitive toe. His words were cut off as the palace's main viewport suddenly filled with the sight of a massive human warship appearing out of quantum space. It hung there, its black hull absorbing light, its weapons clearly targeted on the palace itself. A transmission cut through their jamming with insulting ease. "This is Captain Sun Mikang of the Earth Fleet. Your empire killed one of our people. Now we're showing you the consequence of that action. You have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally." Krath sank back onto his throne, watching as more human ships appeared around his capital. They had been fools, drunk on 10,000 years of power. They had killed a human girl and thought nothing of it. Now their empire was falling apart in days, their mighty military reduced to helpless observers as humanity demonstrated what true power looked like. Should I prepare a surrender message, Supreme Overlord?" his communication chief asked quietly. Krath nodded slowly, his head crest flat against his skull in submission. They had no choice. The humans had outfought them, and outmaneuvered them at every turn. His mighty empire, built over millennia, had been systematically dismantled in less than a week. As he dictated terms of surrender, Krath couldn't help but think of the human girl whose death had triggered all this. They had killed her without a second thought, considering humans barely worth noting. Now humanity had revealed their true strength, and the galaxy would never be the same. The mighty Trilar Empire was falling, brought down not by brute force, but by careful planning, superior technology, and the determination of a species that had simply been waiting for the right moment to show their true power. And somewhere out there, Captain Sun Mikang's ghost fleet continued its work, ensuring that the Empire's fall would be complete and final. General Du-Hyun Choi watched from the command deck of the EF's Harbinger as his fleet dropped out of quantum space around the Trilar homeworld. The massive warships, their true nature hidden beneath years of careful deception, moved into attack formation with practiced precision. "Status report," he commanded, his voice calm despite the historic moment unfolding before him. "All ships in position, General," his tactical officer reported. "The Trilar defense fleet is responding exactly as our simulations predicted." On the main display, Choi watched as the Trilar warships formed up in their traditional battle squares, a formation they had used successfully for thousands of years. It was a testament to their arrogance that they hadn't changed their tactics in all that time. "Commence Operation Revelation," Choi ordered. "Let them see what we've become." The human fleet began its advance. To Trilar sensors, they appeared to be the same primitive warships they had mocked for years. Outdated engines, basic weapons, minimal shields. The Trilar commanders probably expected another easy victory. "Enemy fleet is engaging," the tactical officer announced. "They're using standard attack patterns." Choi allowed himself a small smile. "Initiate metamorphosis protocols." Across the human fleet, ships began to change. Panels that had appeared decorative split apart, revealing hidden weapon systems. Hull sections shifted and transformed, quantum technology allowing the vessels to alter their very structure. What had seemed like primitive warships became something else entirely. By all the stars, a Trilar commander's shock transmission cut through the comm channels. "What are they?" The human ships accelerated with impossible speed, their quantum drives finally operating at full capacity. Years of pretending to be slower, less advanced, had led to this moment of revelation. The Trilor fleet's first volley passed harmlessly through quantum-shifted hulls. "Target their flagship," Choi commanded. "Show them what real human technology can do." The Harbinger's main gun, hidden for years behind false panels and sensor baffles, powered up. The weapon fired a concentrated burst of quantum energy that simply erased a portion of reality. The Trilor flagship, along with its supposedly impenetrable shields, ceased to exist. "Multiple enemy ships breaking formation," Tactical reported. "They're trying to regroup." But regrouping was impossible against an enemy that had studied their every move for years. Every diplomatic mission had recorded their battle drills. Every trade delegation had analyzed their response patterns. Every seemingly innocent human visitor had been part of the most extensive intelligence operation in history. "Launch the AI strike craft," Choi ordered. Swarms of autonomous fighters emerged from the human ships, their neural networks operating at speeds no organic pilot could match. They tore through the Trilor formation, targeting weak points that had been identified through years of careful observation. "General," his communication officer called out, "we're intercepting their command transmissions. They're in complete chaos." Of course they were. The mighty Trilor Empire had never faced an enemy who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. They had never imagined that the humans they dismissed as primitives had been studying them, learning them, preparing to take them apart piece by piece. "Their reinforcements are arriving," Tactical announced. 3 fleets incoming from the outer system." Choi nodded. "Exactly as expected. Execute Phase 2. Hidden quantum beacons, placed over years by seemingly innocent human merchant ships, activated throughout the system. The Trilor reinforcements found their carefully plotted approach vectors suddenly leading nowhere, their ships emerging from hyperspace far from their intended positions. Enemy fleets are scattered across the system," Tactical reported with satisfaction. "They're completely disorganized." The battle, if it could even be called that, continued with mechanical precision. Human ships, their true capabilities finally revealed, systematically destroyed the pride of the Trilor Navy. Weapons that had been developed in secret, tested in hidden systems far from prying eyes, proved devastatingly effective against defenses that had never evolved. "The Trilor command structure is collapsing," his intelligence officer reported. "They're beginning to realize just how completely we deceived them. Years of playing the role of an emerging civilization, of accepting their condescension with humble smiles, had led to this moment. The Trilor had never questioned why humans seemed so interested in their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. They had been too busy congratulating themselves on their superiority." "Send the message," Choi commanded. Across all frequencies, in perfect Trilor language, the transmission went out. "You thought us primitive. You thought us weak. You killed one of our own without a second thought. Now you understand what we truly are." The remaining Trilor ships began to retreat, their formations broken, their confidence shattered. They had finally realized that every interaction with humanity had been part of an elaborate deception. Every seemingly innocent question had been gathering intelligence. Every diplomatic exchange had been preparing for this day. "Enemy fleet is in full retreat," Tactical announced. "The orbital defense grid is ours." Choi looked out at the Trilor homeworld, its surface now exposed to human weapons. "Send word to Earth Command. Operation Revelation is complete. The path to their capital is open." As his fleet secured their position, Choi thought about the long years of preparation that had led to this moment. The Trilor had ruled through fear and arrogance for 10,000 years. They had never imagined that their greatest enemy would be a species that had spent years playing the role of humble students, learning everything they needed to bring an empire to its knees. The revelation was complete. Humanity had shown its true face, and the galaxy would never be the same. Ambassador Yoon Hee-song stood in the center of the Trilor Imperial Palace's Grand Hall, her small frame a stark contrast to the towering architecture designed to intimidate visitors. The once proud Trilar leaders huddled on their ornate thrones, their scales dulled to ashen grays and browns, colors of fear and submission in their species. The same hall where Jai-Yun Park had been murdered now witnessed the Empire's final moments. Massive view screens showed human warships hanging in orbit, their weapons trained on key military targets across the planet. Through the vast crystal windows, the burning wreckage of the Trilar defense fleet could be seen scattered across the purple sky. "The terms of surrender are non-negotiable," Song announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "The Trilar Empire, as it has existed for 10,000 years, ends today." Supreme Overlord Krath, his head crest flat against his skull, shifted uncomfortably on his throne. Just weeks ago, he would have ordered her execution for such words. Now, he could only listen. First, Song continued, the immediate dissolution of all Trilar military forces. Your ships will be decommissioned, your weapons destroyed, your armies disbanded. A low murmur ran through the assembled Trilar nobles. Their entire society was built on military might. Second, the release of all subjugated worlds. Every species you've dominated will be given full independence, with human observers ensuring a peaceful transition. Song activated a holographic display, showing the vast territory that had once been the Trilar Empire. System by system, it began to break apart into independent regions. Third, the complete reformation of your government. The imperial system ends. Democracy begins. Every Trilar citizen will have an equal voice. "This is madness," one of the noble council members burst out. "You cannot expect us to." A human warship chose that moment to appear through quantum shift directly outside the palace windows, its weapon ports glowing with barely contained energy. The noble fell silent. Fourth, Song continued as if there had been no interruption. "Reparations. The wealth you've stolen from 100 worlds will be returned. The resources you've plundered will be repaid." She walked slowly around the room, making eye contact with each Trilar leader. "You killed a human girl for daring to point out your corruption. You thought there would be no consequences. You were wrong." The holographic display shifted to show Jai-Yun Park's face. The young diplomat's image hung in the air, a silent witness to justice being served. Fifth, education reform. Your children will learn the truth about your empire's history. They will understand why it fell. They will know better than to repeat your mistakes. Supreme Overlord Krath finally found his voice. "And if we refuse these terms..." Song's expression didn't change. "Look around you, Supreme Overlord. Your fleet is destroyed. Your defenses are gone. Your armies are scattered. Refusing is not an option." She gestured to the windows, where more human ships were appearing from quantum space. "We spent years studying you, learning your weaknesses, preparing for the moment you would show your true nature. When you killed Jai-Yun Park, you gave us that moment." The terms continued, each one striking at the very foundations of Trilar society. Their caste system would be abolished. Their records would be made public. Their technology would be shared with those they had oppressed. Finally, Song said, "A memorial will be built. Here, in this very hall where you murdered a young woman for speaking truth to power. It will stand as a reminder of the day your empire's arrogance led to its fall." She placed a datapad on the floor before the throne. "Sign, and your people will have a chance to build something better from the ashes of your empire. Refuse, and we will find others among your people who will." The Trilar leaders looked at each other, their scales shifting through colors of fear, anger, and finally resignation. One by one, they pressed their ceremonial seals to the document. "A wise choice," Song said as she collected the datapad. "Human peacekeepers will arrive within the hour to begin the transition. Your cooperation will determine how smoothly this process goes." As she turned to leave, Supreme Overlord Krath spoke one last time. "You destroyed an empire that stood for 10,000 years over the death of one human.